listener production.
Automotive commentator and journalist Greg Rust, and this is Rusty's Garage. In this episode, I'm in Sydney at the home of Podcast One. Normally I'm on the road talking to most of my guests, but today's has spent plenty of time here entertaining listeners from purpose-built studios just like this one. But nowadays, Merrick Watts is spending more time back on the road, where it all began with stand-up comedy. His quick wits and genuine nature are matched by a proper love of cars, bikes, as well as the odd resto project he's bought over a long lunch. Mez is proud of his roots and loves to share the yarn about growing up in the same place as some great Aussie racers. Merrick Watts, hello.
Pleasure to be here.
How did you get here today? What did you drive? What did you ride?
I came in the car today only because it was raining. Otherwise, I would normally take my motorbike into the city. Today, I drove an Audi A4 wagon.
Very family.
Yeah, it is,
but
isn't it?
Euro, though.
You were surprised when you really thought I was going to say HSV.
Oh, exactly. In my head, straight away was HSV.
Yeah, it used to be. It used to be until the children ruined my dreams. And now I drive around in a German wagon.
Das ist gut, yeah.
It's a great car. I will say this straight off the bat. I think it is possibly the best car I've ever owned. Next to, no, actually just slightly below the HSV GTO Monaro I had, which was the greatest weapon I've ever had.
We will get to that in the podcast. You grew up in Eltham in Melbourne. What were the family cars back then? And a couple of legends grew up in that part of the world, mate. There's a bit of of automotive heartland almost, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Eltham is in the Diamond Valley. Just outside on the outskirts of Melbourne. And I went to Eltham High, and that, of course, is the home of Peter Brock. Brocky went to my high school, obviously before I was there. And that man had a profound influence on the region and a profound influence on the young men in that district. Lounsey, just up the road as well, at Diamond Creek, which is the second high school I went to. Let's not talk about how I was expelled, whatever. Nothing car related, just other poor behaviour. There's always been a kind of a pedigree there of car enthusiasts and footballers. It's a kind of a great area for both of those. But yeah, having Peter Brock living in your town, going to your high school, really was a really quite a big effect on a lot of mate. There was so many Ranas. It was hilarious.
Was there?
Yeah, heaps of blokes owned Ranas.
What was in the family garage back then?
Well, that's a funny thing. Not my man and my brother and myself. We all like cars, but different types. My man was never actually. He was never into Bathurst or racing cars, but he was a guy who liked cars. Mm-hmm. So he really liked European cars, you know. And I think that was probably more to do with his age, because when he was growing up as a kid, there was no Australian manufactured cars.
Okay.
So he liked Jags. I don't think he ever owned them, but he liked Jags and he liked BMWs. He owned one or two BMWs. He owned a Holden later on in life, and he used to drive Mercs because he was in advertising, my father, so he was a massive wanker. See where I get it from?
Yeah, I do. The love of two wheels kicked in at a very early age too, didn't it? Courtesy of your cousin, is that right? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, my mum's side of the family from Broken Hill, and in Broken Hill, dirt bikes and motorbike riding certainly as I was a kid many years ago, was just so available there, because you literally could just go out of town a little bit and you would have hundreds of miles where you could just cut loose in the desert. So my uncle was a miner, and my cousin was a miner, and they lived on an estate which was owned by Pasminco, which is one of the big mining companies like BHP. And so they had this incredible area where you could ride, go-karts and motorbikes on a sealed road. Awesome. And then there was a dirt road kind of adjacent to it, and you could cut sick, and there was absolutely no repercussions.
What were the bikes?
Oh, well, this is embarrassing. The first time I ever stacked a motorcycle was a scooter. And, yeah, I'd ridden motorbikes before, but I was on a scooter. I don't even know where it came from. It was at my cousin's place. And I can't even remember why it was there, but we'd been riding go-karts, which had motorbike engines in it. And we got off the go-kart, and I remember getting on the scooter, and I said, watch this. Classic last words in Australia.
Watch this,
just before some guy jumps off a roof and knackers himself. I said, watch this. And I tried to take a sharp turn with a scooter and kind of flick it around like you do with a dirt bike, pull it around your body and go in the direction. So like a full 180, but with a scooter. And anybody who knows anything about motorbikes, scooters are bottom heavy, and I didn't know this. And the engine's mounted to the back wheel, and it just kind of didn't quite get around. And I slipped, and my hand went on the throttle, and it dragged me, and I smashed into a corrugated fence, and it dragged me about 10 metres along the fence, along corrugated. So it was on a scooter, and my cousin looked at me and goes, how did you stack a scooter into a fence like an old Vespa?
Being good cousins, they wouldn't have laughed much either, did they?
Oh, they were in hysterics. I think my uncle heard it from inside and came out and he goes, what is going on? And just right down the fence was all the evidence of where I'd scraped it.
So you brought this up, right? How much bark have you lost over time? How many crashes?
Look, I've come off bikes a few times. I've been very, very fortunate. I've never really sustained any real injury. I do gear up a bit, particularly if I'm out on the open road. I'm in full leathers and kidney protectors and back protectors and stuff. I take it very seriously. I've got really top flight gear, all Dainese gear, and Alpine Stars. I would use the good stuff. I came off I think the last time I came off was on a dirt road out the back of Bathurst. Been around the mountain at the regulated speed.
We're not editing this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Keep going.
I was on a Ducati, and I went out in an unsealed road, and they had just done some roadworks, and they put water down and it was clay, and they put water down, and without thinking, I was only doing about 15 Ks, 20 Ks at the most, and without thinking, I touched the front brake, just feathered the front wheel on with the right hand, as opposed to just paddling off the back, and it just went whack, and stacked it at about 15 Ks and just got up straight away because it wasn't hurt and covered in mud. And my mates just went, how did you stack? You've just been around the mountain and you stack it here in the middle. And so I think over the years, I've had probably 3 or 4 spills, but I've been very fortunate. They've all been low speed. The first motorcycle accident I had a couple when I first started riding bikes, because I actually had a motorbike before I had a car. I wanted a motorbike because I wanted to ride to school, and also too because I was working in the city at pubs in the city, and motorcycles you could just park on the footpath. So I wanted a motorbike because it was cheap and it was easy. It used to cost me about $5 or $6 in petrol for a whole week. It was awesome. So
what was it? Yeah, what was the first bike?
I had an old Kawasaki. It was a Quacker, a 250 LTD, and it was a great bike. It was really good. Blew it up, of course, eventually killed it. Wrung the neck out of it, trying to make it do things it couldn't do. But I was riding along the main street of Eltham as a young man, and I saw this young woman on the other side of the road, and I just probably took too much of a cursory glance, bang, straight in the back of a car.
Ooh.
And damaged my bike, and I was a little bit hurt, but I was okay because I had gear on. And there was a bloke on the other side of the road said to me, he goes, did you get a good enough look? And I said, yeah. And he goes, was it worth it? And I said, not really.
They're the worst, aren't they? When the little low speeders, or when someone catches you. I had same deal, like a little 15k an hour crash going into the car park of Channel 10 in Sydney. It was a wet day, and you come off. I think it's called Saunders Street there, and then you come and then down into the and just the
know exactly what you're talking
little
about.
change of direction, and just went woofka.
Yeah. I could never see anybody having an accident in that circumstance ever, because it would be ridiculous that a person could make an error there. But
highly embarrassing, exactly.
I bet it
the
is.
Security came and
embarrassing.
Yes. You were born in the 70s, so was I. I'm a little older than you, and I got the greys to prove it.
Looks it.
Yes. But invariably, when you get to kind of, I guess, age 10, I mean, you talked about Ranas before, Tiranas, right? Was it the A9X? Was it the XU1? What were the cars that you loved back then?
I did like the Tiranas, and a few of my mates had Tiranas, but A9X, no one was having an A9X, except for Brocky, who had them on tap. But there was, LJ Tiranas I liked, but my favourite, without doubt, was an SLR 5000. I loved them with the drop tank, and, they just, particularly if they were in black and white, but there was a few around at the time, and I was lucky that I never came to any grief driving around with my mates, although I wasn't driving them, my mates had them, and there was a little bit of youthful exuberance driving in the back roads, because Eltham is out in the sticks and in the suburbs of Melbourne, and between it, there's a big passageway through the hills there.
Great piece of roads to drive on.
Yeah, for cars and bikes, it's just wonderful. But the thing is, unfortunately, there's a lot of dangerous roads there, and there's a lot of widowmakers trees that if you take the bend incorrectly, you will come to grief, and a lot of people have, very unfortunately. But there's a great story of a guy called Dave, who was a bit of a local legend. He had an SLR 5000, and it was worked to within an inch of its life. You could hear it
tank and everything you talked about before. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it was unreal. And Dave, we'll call him Dave because that's his real name. Dave had an SLR 5000. And another guy I went to school with, Glenn, again, real name. Glenn was living out in the sticks, out in the bush, somewhere probably near Warrandyte, on an old road. And in those days, this is like back in the probably late 80s, early 90s. If you saw someone on the side of the road hitchhiking out in those areas, because there was no bus services and there's certainly no trains because you're out in the bush, if you saw someone on the, walking along the side of the road, you would pull over and offer them a lift down to, Warrandyte, to the train station, or to Diamond Creek, or to Hurstbridge, or wherever it was. You'd help them out. It was kind of a good community thing that you would do, right?
Yep.
So my mate Glenn's walking along in the middle of nowhere one day, and this Tirana comes belting through the hills, and he could hear it, right? And he probably might have guessed at that stage it was Dave's, and it has come flogging around the corner and then pulled up right in front of Glenn. And Dave, who was driving it, he was very well known, Dave. I said, do you need a lift? And he goes, yeah, if you could drop me off the train station, that'd be great. He goes, all right, no dramas. Gets in. Dave has absolutely floored it. Like, he's going at absolute top speed through some really, really dangerous roads. So Glenn turns around to Dave and said, look, mate, would you mind maybe not driving so fast, because
we don't need to qualify here.
Yeah, because it's borderline lethal. Do you reckon you could back it off a bit? And he goes, oh, no, I can't, because if I do, the coppers will catch me. And Dave had pulled over mid-pursuit
to pick him up.
Mid-pursuit to do the customary thing and pick up a hitchhiker. He was mid-pursuit in a police chase, stopped the car, picked up Glenn and drove him to the train station, and they didn't get caught by the cops.
We love Dave. He did his community service before he even got caught, didn't
Dave's
he?
dead now.
Oh, is he?
No, he's actually not. But isn't it, like, I always thought that was one of the great urban myths, but it's not really an urban myth, but I always thought that was one of the one of the great Tirana stories.
Did you get your licence first go, and in what car or bike?
I got my driver's license. I got 98%, I think, when I got my driver's license. But the first time I went to get my bike license, I failed it. Now I know that I've heard you talk to Shane Jacobson about him losing his license before he got it. At similar circumstances, I went to go and get my motorbike license. And because I'd ridden motorbikes before, and I thought, all you do, you just ride a bike. That's what you do, is get on a road bike. So I did none of the road rules. Why would I bother? I got my learners. All I have to do is just go and just do the ride, and we'll be done. And the bloke, because in those days, they used to follow you around. I don't know what they do now, but
what was he like? A real autocratic kind of strict? Yeah.
I mean, these guys were just seriously, they were like the Gestapo. Anyway, this bloke is following me around, and I knew that I'd done everything right. And I came to a stop sign and stopped. But anyone who knows with bikes, you can stop, and then if you're good enough, you just feather out the clutch a little bit and lay on the throttle, and you'll just pick up momentum again before you actually need to put your foot down. It's classic. That's good riding. In my book, that's a sign of exemplary riding. Forget your slow ride. That is textbook. And he said, no, you failed. And I said, why? And he goes, because you're at a stop sign.
Didn't fully stop.
And I said, well, I stopped, mate, because I wasn't going anywhere. And he said, you need to put your foot down on the ground. That's a stop on a motorbike. And I went, But I wasn't going anywhere. That stopped. Anyway, so we had a discussion. 2 weeks later, went back, got my licence.
Very good. You're in the media nowadays, but it was, as you said before, stand-up to begin with on the Kawasaki. What was the first gig? How did you get there? Was it on the Kawasaki? How did it go? How did the first gig go?
I think by then, by the time I did my first gig, I would have had my Valiant. I think I might have bought my Valiant by then. That was my first car.
Just the brown one, the 1970?
Yes, 1970 VG Coupe. Was brown because I picked the ladies. I like to pick the colours for the ladies.
Attractive,
Yeah.
miss.
I like to pick a colour that says to the ladies, "I'm available. I'm really available." Brown with a vinyl roof, cream vinyl roof, so the ladies just go, "Stop us, hold us back. That guy is amazing." But it was a brilliant car. So I think I might have actually driven that car. That would have been to my first gig when I was 21, and so that would have been 20 years of age, I think. So I would have been driving that at the time.
Stock?
It was. It had a 245 Hemi in it, which was stock at the time. And like motorbikes and everything else, eventually you find a way to blow those up. Blew that up on the Easter Freeway, smoke pouring out. I still reckon I've got one of the cylinders had blown. So it was, it was past its use by date. And that's what's great about those Hemis. I still drove it probably another 20, 30 Ks down to Valiants, who are my mechanics. And within a week and a half or something like that, we'd switched in a 265, back on the road.
Beautiful.
Unreal. Such a good car.
Are you any good on the tools? Like, could you do the basic maintenance?
Oh, I used to do, not great maintenance. I used to do oil and stuff like that. And those cars too, they were so easy. I used to switch the thermostat out, with each season, because living in Melbourne, in winter it'd be freezing, and in summer it'd be boiling hot. And so if you're stuck in traffic, it could boil over, and in winter it'd be a slow start. So I used to change the thermostat around and do little bits and pieces on it, but because you could. And it's the same with motorbikes then, you could. I used to change the throttles and levers and stuff like that. Some of the basic stuff change the chain, stuff like that. But now, no way. Would not. I swear to God, I get challenged by putting windshield wiper fluid in my car now. I swear to God, I don't even know where it goes anymore. It's in German. I go, where is it? Is that windshield wiper? And then you think, what if I put water where the oil's going? It's so confusing. So, no, I used to do a little bit, but I would never say I was particularly handy, but enough to kind of get by.
Whatever happened to the brown Valiant? What became of it?
I moved to Sydney when I was 25, and I still owned it, but I didn't bring it to Sydney because it was probably not in great shape by that stage. Mm-hmm. And I loved it, but it was a boat to drive. I loved driving. God, I thought I was good in that car. But
you could have fitted heaps of mates in it, I would have thought, too.
Oh, mate, you know
massive.
what? We used to go, I remember one time Rosso and I went away for a boys' weekend, and we're talking about, they go, there's not enough beds or something. I said, don't worry, I'll just whack a bed in the boot of the Valiant. And I did. I just got a whole mattress, like a huge futon. It was like a queen size thing. Just put it straight into the boot of the car and then just shut the lid. And went, that's it. There you go.
Sorted.
Straight in, because it had a massive boot space. You could fit a whole family in there. Not that you would, but you could. So, yeah, it was a very, very handy vehicle. But I think the Valiant, I think, was one of those cars that is not so suited to Sydney as a city. And I knew that pretty quickly, and so I didn't bring it up here. And so now I think I gave it to my brother, and then I think he gave it to a mate of his or something like that, and they were a Valiant enthusiast. But by that stage, it wasn't really worth much. I paid $2,000 for it, and I didn't increase any value in it. I swear to God, the stereo was probably the most valuable part of that car.
Was it a column shift auto? What was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
on the tree auto.
Yeah.
On the tree auto. So, and that's a funny thing. I've owned several cars over the course of my life, and I like driving. I love driving, and I've really into it. But I've never owned a manual car in my life.
No way.
Never.
You can drive one though, surely.
Yeah, of course I could drive them.
Yeah.
I could flog them. It's great. I'm not an idiot. But
we only get certain people on this podcast. If you told me you couldn't drive a manual, I think we'd be game over, wouldn't we?
No, I can drive them. I like driving them. But people say to me, well, why do you drive auto? Because a lot of the time when I've been driving V8s particularly, you got plenty of throttle because people go, oh, you don't get any power unless you got manual. Well, that's rubbish. You know, you got an HSV and an auto, you're actually going to go faster than you are if you're driving a manual anyway. Around the city, which is where I've always lived, it's a lot easier, you know, driving an auto. But the big thing I reckon is because if you in a motorbikes like I am, that's real gear changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's really, really in it. So if you like that aspect of controlling your speed and controlling your entry and exit with your gears, motorbikes will do that for you. And so I ride very powerful motorcycles, and that kind of gives me that, you know, that sense of driving that I can't really get from a car. I think you get more of it from a bike.
Motorcycle.
Yeah.
You mentioned
really tangible.
You mentioned Rosso before. Tim Rosso, you've had a great partnership with over the years in different projects in radio. Is he a bit of a car guy too? I want to say somewhere that he had an EK or an EH Holden or something. EH Holden. Yeah.
He had a baby poo brown EH. And I mean, like, it was worse than my Valiant. And that was like proper, like almost that
Venetians
weird,
in the back and stuff, I think, did it not?
Oh, it was baby. It was real. And it was, I think it had cream roof as well, steel cream roof. And he had an old Citroen DS as well. Remember those? He had one of those. He's had a couple of weird cars or so. He's a weird guy. If he's listening now, he knows that. He'd agree to that. So yeah, he was kind of, he loves those kind of cars of an era.
Yep.
You know, and in a different kind of way. Like I like cars. If I could have any car now, I'd probably have an SLR 5000. I just love them. I think they're great. I used to like the Hoeys, but I you know, and I'm not necessarily a Ford or a Holden man, but there's just something about a Rana. They just look brutal.
Yeah.
They look brutal.
Even now.
Yeah, and A9X, of course, but I mean, the reality is that, you know, I'm not going to get one. But an SLR 5000, I think, is a beautiful car. Whereas Rosso kind of sees, you know, the EH is a period car. It's a period piece. It signifies a certain time in Australian motoring history, you know, and it's kind of its start of its motoring history, as opposed to being associated with racing or associated to the glamour of, you know, Brocky or Bathurst or any of that.
When you got to a point in your career where, you know, you could feel a bit more comfortable, you perhaps weren't going gig to gig and things like that, and you could afford to lash out and buy a new car, what did you treat yourself to? What was the first new car? Okay,
so my first car was the VG Valiant, which I loved. The next car I bought was when I was here in Sydney, and this goes against everything that I just said about not owning a V8 in the city. I was driving past a car dealership and I saw a powder blue Mark 1 Mustang 73 model, and it had the big black stripes up the bonnet and the Mark 1 badging, and I just went, that car...
Got to have it.
...is unreal. And I just went, and I'd never thought about buying a Mustang ever, but it had the 351 Cleveland in it, and I just went, oh, and it was in mint, and I just went, I'm having that. So I went to the dealer and I said, what happened here? And he said, this old guy bought a new Ford. He bought an FPV, and his wife said, you have to get rid of one of the cars. So he traded this in, and he had another old car. So I went, well, it's been looked after. It was part of the Mustang Club. I bought it, and I only sold that about 3 years ago. Had it for a long time. It only did about 180 kilometres in that time. Because I live in the city, and it was a stupid car to own in the city, but geez, I looked cool driving it.
Didn't your dad say you're a bloody idiot when you bought it too?
Of course, because I am an idiot. And then, so I bought living in the inner city of Sydney, I bought a V8, and then I went, oh, you know what? I should just have that just as like a weekender. And what I need to do is get a more sensible weekday car, because I live almost 5 kilometres away from where I work, in my home at 5 kilometres away. So what I should probably do is get there in the fastest weapon I can afford. And the first new car that I ever owned was a GTO Monaro, the first edition. I remember seeing the billboard ad for those Monaros, and I just went, that is everything that I want in a car.
6 litre, I think, is that right?
The first one was the 5 litre.
Okay. Yep.
And it was, I think it was just a tick under 300 kilowatts, and was the black one. That was before they had the kind of, you know, the nostril flares at the start. Yep. But I got one of those as well. Don't worry about that. I went full idiot. So I had a black one first, and then when they came out with it, like, I think it was the Gen 3 or whatever it was then, it was just before the last of the GTOs. It was the last of the GTOs. I bought a red one, and I love that car. That's probably my favourite car of all time. That was a weapon, an absolute weapon, and was just beautiful to drive. Sure, I only live 5 kilometres away from work, but geez, I could get there. I could really get to work. It really helped me to get to work. Like when I needed to get to work, I could get there in
like
that
a
car.
heartbeat.
In that car.
My ears pricked up when you said you sold the Mustang. Mm-hmm. A couple of years on, how do you feel? Do you regret selling it?
No. I have at times, but I don't, because old cars, vintage cars, have got to be loved and they've got to be used.
Yep.
If they're just sitting around, I couldn't put my kids in it. It didn't have seatbelts for kids. I'd have to put in a whole lot of mountings. It was going to become very, very difficult because it had lap sashes in the back, and to do that, then I wasn't really comfortable with having small children in that car. And I went, you know what, I'd rather somebody else use it and drive it and give it the respect that it needs than just sit around. And I thought, at another time when I'm older, I'll be that guy and I'll buy somebody else's car. And I think that's a great thing about cars.
Absolutely.
Cars do have owners and they have stories. And I don't think you can ever, you don't have to hang on to something for dear life forever.
Mm. Did you keep it as it was when you bought it from the dealership?
Yep.
But you did, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I just made sure that it was mechanically A1 and that it was, everything was in good order, and the electrics, I had to fix up some of the electrics because of the conversion.
Yep.
But it was pretty standard. Like from
Mark
the outside.
1, pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful car. Beautiful car.
In the early days of your comedic career, I guess, were there some key people that influenced you? I grew up here in Sydney, so I can vividly remember listening to Doug Mulray, king of FM radio in Sydney. I mean, he loved his cars, all different sorts of cars, commentated at Bathurst and things like that. Who were the people that were comedically the influences for you?
Comedians, look, I have to say the DJing guys, absolutely. I was really influenced by them. Strangely enough, having done 20 years in radio, I was never, ever influenced by anybody on radio.
Really?
No.
Okay.
No. I never used to listen to radio.
And yet it's become a staple for you in many ways.
I love it. It's it's like some people they like eating, but they don't like cooking.
Yeah.
It's certainly influenced by the usual suspects of Blackadder and scripted comedy from the UK and a bit of stuff from the US. But I also too, I was a big reader. I really like Groucho Marx.
Oh wow.
I read a lot. I've read his books several times, and one of his books called Groucho's Letters really inspired me in so many ways. He's a brilliant, brilliant comedian and a massive smart ass. So I was always a student of, and John Clark, massive. John Clark was a huge influence, even though I've never done anything remotely similar in the way his comedy was made. I just loved the way he used to write and the way he used to create comedy. He inspired me enormously. And just before I started doing comedy, my old man gave me a book of his interviews that he did this would have been end of 92. Mm-hmm. And I read that book and was absolutely blown away by how clever his writing was. And it was a two-hander. It was a classic two-hander. So Clark and Dawes. So they for their interviews. And it was a classic two-hander, and I always liked those two-handers. I've always liked dialogue. And I think that's why I like, working in a duo. I like working with somebody else because
bouncing off somebody.
You can do a lot in a duo that you can't do in an ensemble, and that you can't do in working in solos. So they were huge influences on me, those guys.
So invariably when you drive around, I guess you must spend a little bit of time thinking about topical stuff, things that make you laugh.
Yep.
Even though you've established in this chat you don't live very far away in driving terms from, but do you spend a bit of time when you do you impersonate when you're behind the wheel? What do you do, mate? What do you do?
It's really kind of a bit disturbing. We do a lot of road trips as a family. We've driven over the Nullarbor and we drive all over the place. We're awesome. We're a real road tripping family, and I love it. I've spent heaps of time this year driving all around 3-4 different states at least. So I really enjoy it. And there's a funny thing in the car, when I'm in the car with my family, I talk and we kind of, we act as a family would. But when my family's not there, when I'm driving, I become quite creative and I become quite I think of funny things and I say jokes and I can talk to myself in that little confined space. You can talk to yourself and you don't look like you need to be locked up because no one can see you. Whereas like if you just go and do that on the street, somebody's going to call the emergency services. So, you can have that little moment to yourself in the car where you can act things out. You can act out characters, you can act out jokes, and you become quite creative. And over the course of a long trip, which is why I love doing them, you can really kind of bed in creative thoughts. So I drove across the Hay Plains, which I hate, but I find it quite good in some ways because it gives you a long period of time between Adelaide and Sydney to really just not have to think. There's no real obstacles out in the Hay Plains. Anyone who's been out there knows there's nothing. And so you can just kind of let your imagination, you shut off one part of your brain and the creative part of your brain starts to come to the fore. It's a complete opposite with motorcycle riding. I know you spoke to Robbie Madison about this, and it was a real takeaway for me because I agree with him. When you spoke to him, he said that you concentrate so much when you're riding a motorcycle that you actually relax. You are so focused on what you're doing. Like, I don't really get creative on a motorcycle.
No, because you're constantly thinking about where's that guy going? Who's backing out of that driveway?
Is that a branch?
Yeah.
Is that a snake? Is this, is that a true corner? Where's the camber? Those sorts of things, like you're trying to pick out those nuances of the road to keep yourself alive, particularly if you're at pace and particularly if you're in dynamic corners and hills and, you're looking for rubble. You're looking for, has it rained recently and washed, small stones onto the road? Is that going to put me into a corner? Is it going to compromise my corner? All those things you're constantly thinking. So you're exhausted at the end of the day. But what happens is you get to that point where you are so heavily concentrating.
Immersed in it. Yeah,
in what you're doing, you actually become quite relaxed. And I find it's meditative. You go into a kind of meditative state where everything else, you just shut everything off. You don't have time
with the bike.
Man. And then it's just then it becomes all about the feel. The throttle, the lean, and those forces that you get that are through your body, the G forces and the pressure, and all those kind of really tangible physical aspects of riding a motorcycle that you don't get necessarily driving in a car. Unless in a car, to get that, you have to be on a track and flogging it. Whereas on a motorcycle, you don't need to be going as fast and you can be on an open road.
When you get to that point, that is joyous. But I'm with you. At the end of the day, I'm spent. I'm spent.
Man.
But it's good for us. That's actually quite a good thing.
Sleep like a log.
Yeah.
If you ride for between 4 and 6 hours, particularly if you're riding in dynamic stuff, 4 hours over the course of a whole day, you should be tired. You should be exhausted. You shouldn't be doing any more than that. Like in really dynamic stuff, you're going through the Alpine Way or, into mountain territory and you're doing a lot of corners and a lot of hard leaning, you should be knackered.
Yeah.
You should be knackered at the end of the day and you should sleep like a log and wake up a bit sore. It's great.
I'm glad that you take the family on road trips because in many ways modern life is less and less about that. I mean, my folks used to take us always on holidays to the Gold Coast from, that 1,000 Ks from Sydney to the Gold Coast almost became a well-worn path.
Yep.
It's great that you do that. Is there a favourite piece of road either for the family road trip or when you're riding?
I do, yeah. Look, motorcycle riding, Alpine Way, it's just beautiful. And Chain of Ponds, which is up in Adelaide as well, I love. There's lots of places I love to ride for different reasons. With my family, 2 points, right? Greg, you raised a really good point with kids and with cars, right? Is that now they're all on iPads.
Yeah.
And I was saying before about how you can let your mind go as a driver. Remember as you were a kid, you didn't have iPads. You couldn't colour in necessarily. So what you'd do is you'd look out the window and you'd use your imagination. Remember that?
Yeah.
Kids don't have those anymore. Now they have iPads. They don't need imaginations anymore. So it's actually good to strip them out in the cars. We strip out the technology so the kids have to fight. Fight with each other. But I think there's a real thing there where they can, just looking off into the distance creates an imaginative landscape for them. But to answer the other part of the question, where is a piece of road, there's a place called Wellington on the Murray River, not far from Tailem Bend or Murray Bridge in South Australia as you're coming into Adelaide, towards Adelaide, but it's a little bit further south, down towards the mouth of the Murray, down towards Goolwa. And you cross over at Wellington on a little punt. So you come down this road.
Old school.
There's no one there, and then you get to this old punt.
Love
and the punt takes you across the Murray River to the other side, and then you go towards Strathalbyn, and there's beautiful roads, Bull Creek. There's some really good roads for motorcycles there, and it's a great place. And Langhorne Creek is around there. You have to go through Langhorne Creek. And for me, always, whenever I go into Adelaide, which is a lot, I take my family there a lot, whether I'm in the car or on the motorbike, and a friend of mine does the same thing, you divert out of your way to avoid the normal route to Adelaide. You go down south, down to Wellington, cross the punt, and it is like it's a change, a mental change. It's a shift. I just become instantly more relaxed. I feel like I've completed a journey, and you feel like you're entering God's country. It's beautiful down there. You go through wine regions, hills. It's just magnificent. For me, that's my favourite moment on the roads is when I cross the punt at Wellington and I move into, the greater aspects of Adelaide.
Great stuff.
We're always a road tripping family as a kid. My dad used to drive us because my mum was from Broken Hill, where my cousins were from. And so we used to drive from Melbourne, where we lived, up to Broken Hill 2-3 times a year. And my old man was the classic, we're getting there in 8 hours. We're getting there in 8 hours. One stop. Everything. You will eat 4 dim sims, take a whiz, have a can of Passiona, and then we go to Broken Hill. That's it. So we'd get the car in Melbourne, drive straight to Mildura, and it was like, seriously, it was like a pit stop. It'd just be, get back in the car. You're taking too long.
We're on the clock.
8 hours. 8 hours. But that's a 9-hour drive. 8 hours. Get in there, and he would just be flat stick trying to get there for 3 o'clock so he could have a couple of cold tinnies on arrival. And that was classic 70s Watts family.
Love it. I've seen a post of yours on Instagram. You were buying, quote unquote, another resto project on Gumtree after a few beers. How often does that happen? And what's Georgie's reaction?
Oh, this is so bad. It's a problem.
What happens? You just light up. I've got to have that. What?
I'd been drinking. I got on Gumtree. And because I'd seen this bike, funnily enough, in Adelaide, I'd seen this old bike, and I went, that looks great. And
it's an ex-police bike, isn't it?
It's an ex-police bike.
Yeah.
A 1981 Honda CB750 former police motorcycle. Panniers on it, the whole, or only the sirens and lights have been stripped from it. And it was in concourse condition. Anyway, so I thought, wonder if it's on eBay. Had a look on eBay. No. Had a look on Gumtree. Oh, there it is. Buy it. Just buy it. And I bought it. And then I literally woke up the next day and I went, God, I had the weirdest dream last night. And I bought oh my God, I bought a police bike. What was I thinking? And then it was like, and it wasn't even like in Adelaide. It was like miles away, out in the middle of the desert. Had to get a guy in a tow truck to bring it to Adelaide, transport it to Sydney. Then I had to get it completely, redone. And I went mad and put on new carbies that I brought in from America. Just real.
Original colour? Original white police colour?
I left the motorcycle chassis completely alone. I only under the covers. I only changed, the carbies and the pods and stuff like that. And just basically just to give it better performance. And I've still got that. There, that's at my house. Ask me when the last time I rode that was.
Yeah, when did you last ride that?
Not this year. Not this year. It hasn't been ridden this year.
So are those conversations with Georgie like, gee, we're not really getting much use out of that?
Oh, one time, this is even worse. This just makes it sound bad. But this one time, Rosso and I, we were with some mates, we were having lunch, and we used to on a Friday, the boys and I would go and have lunch. We'd finish work, breakfast radio, and then Friday afternoon sometimes we'd go out and get on the tinnies. And we'd had a few.
Do your best thinking on the tinnies, don't you, too, about buying stuff like this?
And we used to just read unique cars. Just, car magazines. We just sit around and just look at cars. I don't know why. One time Ross and I were just looking at some cars and we went, how fun is that? Leyland P76s.
Oh, no.
2 of those in Queensland. One of them's Pilmere Grape Purple. The other one's Cream. Then, I'm not even kidding, we went, how funny would it be? Because they weren't very expensive because nobody wanted them. Or did they? And then I remember Rosso and I speaking to our PA on the Monday, and she said, the cars are going to arrive from Queensland next week. And we literally went, what cars? And she goes, the 2 cars that you boys bought on Friday. And we went, what? And she said, don't you dare. She said, are you serious? And I said, what has happened here? And she said, you 2 rang me blind, made me buy 2 cars from Queensland, and they're coming down next week on a trailer. 2 Leyland P76s on their way. And we went, oh, God.
What did you do with those?
Sold one of them to a radio station straight away. Sold one of them straight away to a radio station.
Here's a great promotional vehicle.
We bought this new promotional vehicle and then we sold it for the exact amount of money that we bought both of them for, and we got a free car.
Oh, that's brilliant.
There's a message to the kids out there. Be dishonest.
You
gave, for years, that car, it was great.
You gave a great piece of advice once. Mums listening might disagree with this, but you told some motoring colleagues, always buy a car that your mum will hate.
Yes.
What, why, and what is the Merrick Watts criteria?
I think if you don't buy a car that your mum just looks at you and is not, they've got to look at you with total disappointment. Like it's the equivalent, because 2 reasons. Number one, if you bring home a car that your mother hates, that's going to soften her for the blow for when you bring home a girlfriend or a wife. They've already had the experience of not liking something you're very close to. Number 2, I think that genuinely you've got to have that moment. I reckon some blokes like myself, and probably you as well, many people listening would be recidivists in this, and they've got a history, but you've got to have that one thing, that one time in your life where you just go, I just did that entirely for me, where that was not necessarily an impulse buy, but more about having that moment where you feel as though you've bought a character possession. As opposed to buying something that's perfunctory, something that serves a purpose. You've bought something that says, this is how my character is right now. This is how I want to be seen. And that may be a brown Valiant with a vinyl roof, and everyone goes, your character is suspiciously dodgy. And you go, yes, it is.
So the term practical doesn't venture into that definition. And I guess cool kind of means not something expensive Euro that you'll hope will turn, what did you say, David Koch into Johnny Depp. But by that you mean the epitome of cool. So is that what the Mustang was all about, mate? Is that what the...
Oh, man, I saw that car. I remember I'd seen it in one of the Bond movies. There was a red one in...
Diamonds Are Forever.
I think it was, yes. Yeah. And it was one of the very few times you saw James Bond drive an American car. And it was
got up on 2 wheels, I think, Sean Connery and that.
I don't know how he did that. I'll tell you, those things, they are
so
a
heavy.
ship. If they didn't have power steering, my God, you'd have arms like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I think that was a character and a personality purchase for me. I just loved the colour with the black, that really nice powder blue, and it just looked tough. And I love muscle cars. I think they are fantastic. They're impractical. And as you have kids, you just realise more and more how impractical they are, which is why I drive a wagon now. Because I just have so much crap I have to carry everywhere all the time. It's just constant stuff in the boot of my car. So I think at some stage you should always have that purchase where you just go, this is just for me and for me when I'm driving it. And it's a good thing to do, I think. If you do that young, you can experience that. And then when you're older and you have kids, if you do choose to have kids, then you've done that. You've parked that.
This is Greg Rust, and you're listening to Rusty's Garage. More with Merrick Watts in a moment. Mark Webber is one of the most determined racers you'll meet. From humble beginnings, his Aussie grit saw him rise to crazy heights in Formula One before helping Porsche's World Endurance Championship sports car program, bringing some brilliant people together to make their iconic 919 title-winning race car.
So then we got that up to like 30 people and then started reinvesting in areas where it was going to be more comfortable for us. I said, if we invest in these departments, there's going to be less mistakes from the drivers. The car's going to be more predictable. We're going to have an easier product to use in all conditions, even in the rain, at night, on slicks, whatever, you know.
Listen to the full episode with Mark Webber here on Rusty's Garage.
Bench seat. One continuous seat from door to door, similar to a park bench and usually is poorly constructed.
Your young bloke won an indoor go-kart race. Bit of fun.
Wow, you've done some real research.
Bit of fun 12 months ago.
That was a big day.
I was going to say, I would have thought as a dad you would have been quite proud of that. Is he passionate about cars like you? Does he sort of dig it? Because the reason I ask this is my kids are a similar age to yours, and I fear, mate, that it will just become the driverless box on wheels that comes to pick them up, and it's you and I feel differently about that, you know?
I think that's a real sadness that we're going to see. It's going to be a huge cultural shift globally where, and particularly in countries like America and Australia, in the UK, Europe, you know, Italy, France, Spain, Germany, everywhere, essentially everywhere, where those driving experiences are not going to be the same. It's going to be about transportation. My son is, I think he likes cars. He loves being in the front seat of the car. He likes the feel of cars. He doesn't. He loved the Mustang.
Okay.
He used to just go and sit in it, and to the point where we're going, is he all right? He's just sitting in the car there. This car's not going in. There's no keys in it. He's just, and you know, he just comfortably just go and sit behind the wheel of the car.
That's cool.
I think he likes cars. He loved it when he went to go-karting, and he'd never done it before, and he had 3 races, and he got first, second, and I think third in 3 races. And I was like, oh, how good's this?
Yeah.
How good is this?
Very proud.
Could not have got the camera and the Instagram going any faster for drive. Any other photos of him on any other days? No, just that time that he won some go-kart races that meant nothing to anyone. Yep, heaps of photos of that. I think I think he'd actually be quite good for it. He's got good reflexes, and as you know, like a lot of motoring is actually it's reflexes.
Yeah,
and a bit of perception. So I'd love it if he got into cars, because I think he may be of that kind of maybe potentially the last generation of people who are into it.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy for him if he did that and stayed away from motorbikes, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that hard though? Because I mean, you ride them, so
I still love them.
Yeah,
I love them. I'll get another motorbike. There's no way knowing that I'm done with motorbikes. Not just yet.
Your fear though is clearly born out of the fact that on the road other people are not as aware and as you know.
People don't see them, and you know, unfortunately, you know, you've got very little protection. You know, and it's out on the open roads. You know, there's so many variables that can get you to become a cropper that it doesn't make sense. You know, and I think some of the times when I've nearly had accidents compared to the accidents I've had on motorbikes have fortunately been, you know, very, very soft, very, very minimal, and they've been error based, but circumstantial. Whereas, you know, there's been a few times on the open road where I've just been very lucky and I've had a good machine, and the machine's probably helped me a little bit.
Okay.
And there's been a few times in traffic where I've just gone, wow, I would have been dead, absolutely dead if I hadn't have seen that, or if I
wasn't aware or alert.
Well, the best thing is I always say to people, if you ride motorbikes early and you ride them first, you'll be a better driver in a car. You won't have accidents as often because you know you can't afford to have an accident. So you know just because someone's got an indicator on, that doesn't mean they're going to do that. Don't ever think they're going to do that. I always say, you know, watch where the wheels are. The wheels tell you where the vehicle's going to go, not where the driver's looking, not where the car is actually pointing. It's always the wheels, you know. So if you see somebody with their wheels pointing towards you, there's a good chance they're going to come towards you. There's a term in motorcycling, I think this came from, I read this in Keith Code's book, Twist of the Wrist, which is, you know, an incredibly good read. If you ride motorbikes, and you've got to read that, you've got to get a copy of that and read it. California Superbike School. And I've done lots of advanced riding and stuff like that, courses, and I'm right into it. But there's a term called negative fixation, and I believe this in life. I apply it to life as much as I do to motorcycle riding. So negative fixation is when you see something that is potentially hazardous, that is potentially dangerous, and you know it's there, and then you focus on it knowing that it's there, to the point where you focus on it so much, you draw so much attention to it, you end up going into it. So in motorcycle terms, you're going into a right-hander, and there's a great big, right on the bend there's a massive widowmaker on the outside of the left lane there. And it's just a huge gum tree. And you just go, geez, I wouldn't want to hit that because that'd hurt. So then you keep looking at it, and you're not
like
looking.
a magnet.
Exactly. You're now not looking in the right place. You're not looking through the corner. You're not looking at the apex. You're looking at this huge tree. What do you drive into? You ride your bike straight into the tree. Negative fixation. You don't focus on wherever your vision is. Your head will follow your eyes, and your body will follow your head. So, it goes eyes, head, and then your bike. So if you have a negative fixation, and I believe that with show business and with life in general, if you focus on the negative and you're too aware of the negative, that's where you're going to draw to. That's where you're going to go to naturally. So just focus, look through the bend with life. Just look through the bend. Find the exit, look for your exit. Don't go into the bad stuff.
Love it. Great piece of advice that applies to both worlds, both motoring and life generally.
Yeah, I'm going to write a book about it.
Yeah, you should.
It's a very short book. In fact, it's one page. It just says negative fixation. Don't do it. By Merrick Watts.
Here's a leaflet I prepared earlier.
It's a flyer. That's my autobiography. Is a flyer.
An award-winning flyer. You've talked about the family planner. You've talked about the ex-Honda police motorcycle. What else? What else is in the Merrick Watts garage right now?
Got a BMW K1200R motorcycle, which I love. That is the only motorcycle that I've had for more than 3 years, I think. And I love it. I will flip it at some stage.
Why do you love it?
Because it's. I say to people, anybody who wants to buy a motorcycle, let the bike choose you. Don't you choose the bike. Meaning, throw your leg over a few and pick the one that feels right for your body. So me getting on a little 250 Aprilia is a dumb thing to do. I'm too big. It's not, It's not my size. It's not the right thing. But then you see people at traffic lights and they've got tippy toes touching the ground, on the lights, because they picked a bike that's too high, too big, too much power, and their frame's too small. It doesn't make sense. You've got to it's got to be hand and glove. The bike has got to be as close to feeling like it's a glove on your hand.
Part of you.
Yep, absolutely. Because it is essentially, when you're riding, it's an extension of your body. Yep. So the BMW, I was never into them. I was riding Ducatis before that, and I liked the look of it, and I went, I'm going to give that a ride and just see. But I had no intention of buying it. And I told the guy, I said, I don't want to buy it. And he goes, ride it down to the national park. And he goes, you'll come back and you'll buy it. And I said, mate, I'm not here to buy a bike. I said, I've got a Ducati. I'm very happy. There won't be any problem here. And I took it for a ride. I came back and I said, I want that bike, but with every single extra that there is. I want all of it, as much of it as you can put on that.
So pipe, chip,
everything. All of it. Chip, shield, everything. A lot. New system out the back, got a Remus pipe, carbon fibre
Love
pipe.
it.
Only ride with carbon fibre pipes. And I've loved it ever since. And I feel very comfortable. And there's been a few circumstances too. One time up in the chain of ponds in Adelaide, where I came around a corner and there had been a lot of heavy rain and there's a lot of rubble on the road. And I came around into a right-hander, and it's got traction control. And I'd never ridden a bike with traction control. And I'd never had necessity to kind of, I'd never felt it kick in. And I came around a corner and just hit a bit of loose stuff that I couldn't really see, and because it was dappled light, and I started to slide out, and the bike just cut the power off, came back up into line, and and then bang, pulled back on the handle, straightened me up and put me through the corner. And I thought at the time, if this bike didn't have that tech, I would have gone into the barrier. I might not have, it wouldn't have been necessarily fatal, but I would have been the bike. But I thought that bike has definitely saved me a collision, and it's saved me a few times. It's a very, very good machine, and so I feel very comfortable on it. It's the right weight, it's the right setup. I don't get sore riding, and I've ridden it several times. I can ride it through, alpine regions, and it will belt because it's fast.
Yeah.
But I can also get around the city on it, relatively easy without it kind of labouring too much. So it serves a lot of purposes, and you can change the setup on it quite easily, from a comfortable ride to a tighter sports ride. So it's the only bike I haven't kind of looked to get rid of because it's been a great machine. So that's my workhorse. But eventually, like all horses, you have to take it to a paddock and shoot it.
What about other cars?
Do you know that this is the first time in at least 16, 17 years, I think, that I haven't owned at least 2 cars at one time? I went from HSV, and then I for about a year, I was working here in the station here, and I was 5 kilometres away, not even that. So I was running to work or walking to work. So I had an HSV, and I was just like, I'm not driving this anymore. And it was at one stage I realised I was averaging 25 to 30 kilometres a week. And I just went, what is this?
Yeah.
This has got ridiculous. So I went, my wife had an Audi Q5, which was an excellent car as well. And I just went, well, look, we only need one car at the moment. So I sold the HSV.
Do you miss it? Was it the GTO, the last one that you had?
The GTO, the red one. I do miss it, actually. The problem is I miss it, but would I be using it in the same context? No, I couldn't use that now because I need a wagon now for road trips with the family. Simple as that.
I touched on it before. GTO, from memory, correct me if I'm wrong here on some of the stats, but I think it's 6 litre. I mean, awesome V8, isn't it?
About 300 kilowatts. Absolute weapon. And just sounded good. Performed well. It was a beautiful car. So I miss it, but I don't regret moving on from it.
Okay.
So at the moment, I've got an Audi A4 wagon, which is, it's actually a really good car. It's pretty good. They're good cars. I mean, do I feel like a champion driving it? No. Am I slightly ashamed when people see me driving it? Yes. Yes. But, having driven it, right across the country, it's an excellent vehicle. It's safe and it's reliable and it's just a good car.
You've done, over time, some crazy things with cars too. So based around the Ford that was kind of made famous by Mad Max, you created the barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
156 grand on a car that could also cook a steak in the boot. Tell us about that.
Okay. So one time I was at lunch and I was drunk. It sounds like that. I had this idea. I don't even remember how it really came about, but I was working at Triple M and there was an idea for that I had. I'd been watching Mad Max a lot, which is not uncommon for me. And somebody from Barbecues Galore said, they want to do something in your radio show and have you got any ideas? And I said, yes, I do. I said, I reckon we should build a car like the Interceptor, and we should, like an old school Mad Max Pursuit Interceptor looking machine where you've got, matte black and dirty mags and just a filthy looking beast. And I said, then I think we should put a barbecue in the boot of the car. And everyone went, do you have any idea how much that costs? And I said, do you have any idea how much I don't care? So I thought at the time, when we bought it, we bought an XA
Yeah.
and Superbird, and we got it modified heavily. I think it was like about 20, 30 grand to buy it. And then we put a lot of gear in it and a lot of work, and it tipped over 100 grand, and I had no idea. I seriously thought it was about 60 grand.
The engine could power the barbecue, is that right?
The engine could power the sun. But it was great, and it was fantastic. And what's brilliant about that is that at the end of it, we had this great radio moment where it was driving around, it was going to the races, it was going to the V8s, and it was appearing as this kind of vehicle, and people still ask me about it all the time, and that's what I love. The people, car enthusiasts, go, what about the barbecue? Where's that? Where is it at the moment? And the guy who actually did a lot of the work on it, he bought it back from the station at a very discounted rate. He did very well out of it. Very well. And so it still lives on. It's still out there somewhere. Excellent. I don't know where it is exactly at the moment, but it's still out there and it's still on the road, and it's a great thing. And it was a great opportunity to take a professional organisation's money and just piss it up against the wall. When I say an organisation, I mean the people who right now are broadcasting this podcast.
Right.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Helping to pay back the barbecue.
Exactly right. That's why I'm here, because I feel indebted.
What was the engine in it? Tell us a bit about the power plant. What you?
It was a 351.
Yeah,
it was it was a 351. So it was not lacking, but there's just I love that really kind of tangible sound and that rumble that you get in those old cars. And you're reminded when you get back into an old car, and you don't get it when you get into a modern car. Even if you get into a really high-powered car like an Aventador or something like that, it'll sound really aggressive, but it doesn't shudder when you turn the key. So it turns on, and you know that there is so much accessible horsepower. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. They sound awful and rough, and then the moment you kind of inject a bit of throttle, the whole thing comes to life in this glorious manner, mate.
Yes.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But when those old cars, you turn the key over, and the car just kind of, shimmers and it moves because the engine is so powerful. And the car is so poorly constructed that it just it wobbles a bit like jelly, but you feel it's very tangible. It comes back, and there's that kind of physical feedback loop that you get from driving old cars, that that you get from riding motorcycles, that you don't get when you get in a Prius.
Absolutely.
You get in a Prius, you feel nothing, and there's no tactile moment with that.
In the midst of the comedy work, you've done a little bit of serious acting as well, and I can fondly remember you playing Marty Johnston in Underbelly, Tale of Two Cities.
Worst acting of all time.
I thought it was a great fit.
I was terrible.
Invariably, though, that means there would have been some cool things on set. Were there any cool cars on set in that movie? Did you get to check any of them out?
There was actually, in Underbelly, they had lots of great vehicles. I never got to get anywhere near them. The car that I was supposedly dragged from and then executed in the wilderness from was a Jag. I want to say an XJ. From memory, I remember it was a Jag. But I didn't really get to get around. No, I didn't get to get around the cars. And I thought there was, when I first read the script, I remember the time thinking, oh great, it's based in the 70s. There'll be wicked cars in this. There'll be great cars. I saw none of them. You know what I saw? I saw a revolver at the back of my head being shot in a forest and then being mercilessly stabbed after I'd been shot. I'm already dead, mate. You shot me in the head. What are you stabbing me for? I'm clearly dead. Stop hurting me. And of course, whilst Damon Gameau is a fantastic actor and a great guy, he was responsible for killing me in the Underbelly series, which a lot of people were very grateful to him for. But unfortunately, he didn't kill my acting career. He just killed me as a character. People were hoping for both. And he had to stab me, and I had to wear this protective inlay underneath my wardrobe as like it was kind of like a mesh.
Yeah.
And it's because even though they were using a fake knife with a retractable blade, if the blade locked and he stabbed me, it would puncture me and kill me, right? So they had to take all these precautions, and it was all really good. And
nothing to fear here.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they used an actual real gun at the back of my head, I was a bit more worried about that, frankly, rather than the fake switchblade. But when I was on the ground, I had to pretend I was dead. And then Damon had to stab me repeatedly, and they had to reshoot it like probably 3 or 4 takes at least. So we calculated that I was stabbed anywhere between 150 and 250 times through all the takes. And what had happened is, because he's a good actor and because I'm an excellent corpse actor, I laid there and he stabbed me, and then the next day I was completely black with bruises all around my ribs, and I think he may have split the intercostal in my ribs. But I'm such an excellent actor that all you see is a corpse on the ground because I'm that good.
And the Jag drove away.
I was in agony.
So you never got to...
And then it drove away and the Jag, and I went, well, that was it. What a dream. Glad I was a big part of the Underbelly series.
I want to get to the Hollow Men now. Working with the Working Dog production guys, amazing. I love that show. Comedy about government policy-making units that is, I think, scarily accurate. Probably
too accurate. Too accurate.
Anyway, you meet a designer and builder on set, James Clark, and you guys start toying with the idea of modifying Honda CT110s, the mighty postie bike.
Yeah, it was weird because we used to spend a lot of time. We actually we would work together on the set of Thank God You're Here.
Okay.
And on the Hollowman as well. And we'd started just talking about bikes whilst I was backstage. I should have been paying attention to what I was doing on the show, but we'd always be talking. No, seriously. There was one time we were literally talking about motorcycles, and Shane Bourne had introduced me and please make him welcome, Merrick Watts. And I was out the back. I wasn't even, it's meant to be standing where the door is. So I ran. They've gone, Merrick. And I ran, and I made it look like it was part of the bit, but really, I wasn't paying attention. Anyway, so, James and I had this discussion about motorcycles and about postie bikes and modifications. And there was lots of people, like Deus, obviously, by that stage had been making bikes, and they were converting like SR400s and things like that. But the premise for us was, rather than trying to have a wolf in sheep's clothing, we said, let's put a sheep in wolf's clothing.
I love it.
So what we did is we got a really piss-weak bike and then made it look a lot more dangerous than it was.
Yeah.
And it was a really fantastic journey and a great thing that we were doing, but, it was making no money. So little money. I think at one bike we made $100 and we were wrapped. And we just gone, we've spent a lot of time on this motorcycle. This is a terrible business plan. So we stopped making them. But we made probably about half a dozen. And I regret two things. There's one called Dear John, where they gave him all different names, and it was an army green that had knobby tyres and stuff like that, and it was great. One of the guys from Two Wheels borrowed it from me for a test ride and didn't want to give it back. And I said, are you serious? He goes, mate, I love this bike, because we stripped out a lot of the weight. They were very, very light. We had just a kickstand as opposed to a prop-up stand, and they were really good. So you could pick them up and carry them. I literally used to carry it upstairs. He didn't want to return it, and I loved that. That was my favourite one, was this one. It was army green, and it wasn't like an army green, like, mash green or an Australian army green. I went through an old catalogue and I found a Russian tank green that I liked.
Ooh, like a drab kind of green or something. Okay, yeah.
Because I didn't want it to be army green. I said it's got to look a little bit different. It's got to be a different type. So we found it, and then we had customised Brooks leather seats and saddlebags and stuff like that. So, like I said, you end up going, you sell it, and you go, that's $100 we've just made there. And we sold that one, and that was the one where I went, oh, that was my favourite.
Should have kept it.
Yeah, and then I saw it for sale at maybe the start of this year. I saw it for sale on the side of the road, and I thought, I should buy that. And then I went, if I come back home with a bike that I've already owned, somebody in my household that's not me is going to ask me why.
Why?
So I went, ooh, I was tempted, and I went, no, I don't think I will. But they were great fun.
I love the notion of it, because effectively what you did was take the humble postie, make them cafe racer spec. Mm-hmm. The fact that you lightened or took a lot of weight out of it, because I think they came out with, it was like 7.5 horsepower, 6 kilowatt or something. They were really underpowered. That probably made quite a difference by lightening it, did it? It
did, actually, because we were able to strip out quite a lot of weight, and it actually did. It increased performance and increased speed. And we put on carby, better carby, clean up the carbies, put on pods. Pipes. Yeah. You know what? We did actually, we changed pipes on one or two of them, but we didn't do it universally on it, because the pipes were actually quite good. They had that stainless steel cover over the pipe. So we didn't kind of hatchet the hell out of them, but we just put on things like new mirrors, because the mirrors on the postie bikes were naff, and just stripped out at the back of the bike, of course, had
to carry the sacks for the
stripped off that a lot of the time and just put on a single lightweight seat. Some of them were really, really light, so we could strip out 20, 30 kilos, I reckon. Wow. Get it down. I think one of the bikes weighed about 90, 95 kilos, so it was weighing less than me. Wow, that just shows how fat I was. And it was, and they were good like that. And now I see postie bikes that have been done similar to ours. And to be honest, not quite as good, but they were similar to the way we made them. And I look at them and I go, hang on a second, is that one of ours? Because I have seen a couple of postie bikes that we made, floating around. And I go, is that one of ours? And then I go, no, it's not.
What do you reckon the thing about them is, or the fascination with them is? Because I had one until about November 2017, and I got rid of it. It wasn't modified like yours. It was absolutely standard.
Did you buy it ex-posty, or you buy the new ones?
No, it was the CT110. It was a 2011 model. Honda Australia helped me source it, and it had been used as a proper postie, and they got it from Australia Post.
Yeah, because they're better. Postie bikes are a modified motorcycle. They're not the CT110. So you can get a postie bike, a CT110. You can, I don't know if you still can, but you can purchase those from Honda. But they're not as robust as the postie bikes. So I can't remember what the main specifications were, but I think it was the forks, the front forks particularly. And a few other modifications are made to be a little bit harder because they had to mount curbs. So the postie bikes would be able to hit gutters, mount curbs, be a bit more robust. Yes. So I think that the ones you could buy from Honda direct might have been a bit lighter, and might have been, but might not have been quite as robust as the ones that were made for Australia Post. So they were a different bike.
So you liked them, and then you went off and built a few of these. My buddy Lee Diffie, who commentated the V8s here for a few years and now works on IndyCar in the States, he took his with him to America.
Oh, they're huge there.
Grant Denyer, who I'm about to talk to, he's fully restoed one, Candy Apple Red. I think it's got 8 bars on it. I mean, what is the thing with the postie bike? Why postie bikes?
I think it's because they're iconic, because only posties had them, and then the public got access to them. So it was something that you couldn't access, that you essentially denied access to, and then all of a sudden we were able to get them and we were able to ride them. And now hipsters have made them look cool, and they're trying to, I think a lot of hipsters actually like to leave them raw and put like a milk crate on the back and try to keep them as true to form as they were. But I think that the appeal of them is the fact that a lot of Australians used to get their post delivered to them by those motorcycles.
One of those things, yeah. I mean, great irony.
I don't even know, does the post service even exist anymore? I don't know. I mean, a guy in a van comes to my house and he's got couriers please written on his shirt, and he gives me a box. He says, your missus has just spent $500. And I go, when you come back, can you punch me in the face? And he goes, no, I'm not allowed to do that.
Great irony that hardly any power, drum brakes, step through semi-auto. I mean, just I can't understand it, but we love them. We do love them. Right, let's get to a couple of key things here. Grail car is something I ask about in this series. If Georgie was cool with it, if you had unlimited budget, what would you have to? Because I mean, clearly you would like a little something back in the garage now. What would you get if you could?
Money, no object, Aston Martin. That is the king of cars. I just think.
Have you driven one? Even a press car or something like that? No?
No. Well, who would let me? But if you've got one you'd like me to drive it, I will do that for you as a favour.
Please email me it.
I mean, I love the Vanquishes. I love. For me, Aston Martin is the perfect combination of style and class with brute muscle.
Yep.
And it throws back to those days of pre-Shelby Cobra, when the Brits were making really good and aggressive sports cars, and then that kind of the American muscle that came with the Cobras was applied to those British stylings, but it had that dirty big Ford V8 motor in it, put into a British style open wheeler. And I think that with Aston Martin, there's that kind of sense of beautiful, understated styling with like brute force underneath. And the sound and the pipes, and you just go, that car can do everything that it looks like it could do. And I like that. I really like Maseratis for the same reason. Whereas I don't look at Lamborghinis and think, that's my car. I don't look at Ferraris and think that's my car. McLarens, I don't look at them and think that's my car. Those cars, I've driven an Aventador and that was an amazing experience, but I would never own one. Okay. I wouldn't feel right in it. It's just not me. But I could see, I can't. It's not going to happen. But if money was no object, I'd drive an Aston Martin. I just think they're stunning.
Classic car that you would love
SLR 5000.
Yeah.
SLR 5000 without a doubt. That's probably more likely. That's got Merrick Watts' midlife crisis written all over it. Black and white, Tirana, SLR 5000, drop tank. There we go.
My old boss at Channel 10 had one, and he tracked back some of the history on it, and they had found out that it was a test mule used by Colin Bond in the Holden dealer team days. It had done a bit of rallying and things like that, and he had Gary Rogers, who runs a supercars team, help restore it and things. I mean, amazing. They're an amazing car, mate, aren't they? Big power and just brute-looking Aussie machine.
The thing I like them, I mean, you look at Monaros, particularly like HRs, I love, and HQs for me the styling changed a bit, but some of those earlier Monaros, I think they look absolutely brutal. I love the look, and particularly when they're in gunmetal, and, you know, they're a good-looking car. But there's something particularly unclassy about the SLR 5000 that I like. It's not just brutal, it's bogan. It's real bogan. It's not even a bit bogan. There's no class to it. Even an A9X has still got a bit of class to it.
Yeah.
SLR 5000 just says speed dealer, doesn't it? Just says the person who drives this car has at some stage has driven drugs around. It's a drug mule. This car has been involved in a police pursuit. It's transited drugs. It's done something horrible. It's got a really kind of nefarious kind of feel to it. And I just think that's cool. I think it's a funny thing.
Hence the reason for some of your hashtags on Instagram, Cashed Up Bogan and Kid Alt, I think that's you do it too, isn't it?
Cashed Up Bogan. So I said, that's what I say to people, don't give bogans like me money. That's what we do. We get drunk and we go and buy Leyland P76s.
On Gumtree.
Motorbikes. Oh,
what drives you mad on the road? I mean, you're a very aware motorcyclist, and what habits on the road drive you mad?
People who can't merge. Adelaide, I'm looking at you. You cannot merge. Don't stop. You merge. The whole point of merging is if it was a stop, you'd have a stop sign, but you don't because it's a merge. So just move into the lane.
One for one.
Just merge. I also, too, the one thing that irritates me in Sydney that doesn't irritate me as much in Melbourne, Melbourne's got it because of hook turns, is that you can go out into an intersection in a green light and you're turning right. You can go right out into that intersection. You can get 2, sometimes 3 cars in that intersection, and then when the lights change, all of you can turn right. But in Sydney, they just go, just one car. I don't want to commit. I don't want to go over the line. Go forward. We're all going to turn right. We can get 3 cars in this light. In this phase, we will all be able to get around if you just move forward a little bit. But no, I'm too passive. I'm scared I'll get caught in the intersection. Whereas people in Melbourne, because they're used to hook turns, where you go right out and then you turn a really hard right. So those 2 definitely.
You talked about taking the tech away from the kids when you go on these excellent road trips. Are you a podcast guy? Are you a music guy? What do you listen to when you drive?
Recently, I listened to a few podcasts, a bit of music, and I do like silence.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think it's one of the few times.
The engine, the environment, just take it all in.
Yep. I think it's one of the few times now where, you know, it maybe years ago would have driven you mad, but now we're so inundated with information, whether it be audible or visual, that we can't escape from it. And it's a good time to just look and think. So sometimes when I'm driving for long periods of time, I will just have complete silence for a couple of hours until I get very bored of my own company. And then I'll just try to put on some music or a podcast or something like that. But yeah, I do. And when I'm motorbike riding, I never listen to music unless I've got a big, you know, like a 3-hour stint on a highway I've got to get through. Then I'll listen to some headphones or something like that through my helmet. But otherwise, never. I just put actually when I'm riding motorbikes, I put
earplugs in. So do I. Yeah.
Because it just cuts it out. You can still feel everything, still hear everything, but it just cuts out some of that wind noise. And I just find actually for me, I just get a better level of concentration.
How many Ks would you do a year, do you reckon?
About 10. About 10 and a half. Idiot. I told you, I'm an idiot. I haven't done a big road trip on my motorbike for a while, but I'm due for one, so I'm going to be in touch with my cousin and hopefully we'll get down the Alpine Way.
A final one for you. You talked about little 15 kilometre an hour, spills. Shunt spills and things like that. a little bit of YouTube gold. I once attempted very poorly to race a car at Winton in northern Victoria, and the steering wheel came off, mate. And my colleagues have never let me forget it. Thankfully, it didn't crash. It was
At Winton?
At Winton. I came off on the final turn and it went off onto the infield.
You could have gone anywhere.
Mate, I could have.
You could have gone anywhere.
And
to heaven's one of those places you could have gone.
Scaife, Crompton, all those guys, they were wailing when they saw this vision. Has there been an embarrassing motoring moment for Merrick Watts?
Oh, I've had a similar circumstance where I was. I've had a couple actually. Strangely, in the same, not the same car, but the same maker car, both Ford XBs, and I was driving my mate's XB once, and the accelerator pedal just fell off. Just as I was driving, just fell off. It just was gone. It was there, and then it just fell off. And I was just trying to then drive a car with just the nub, just trying to get that little nub there. And it was that was a very interesting. And I'd only had my license for about 3 weeks, and I was driving a car with the pedal had just come off. But another time, a young bloke lived across the road. He had an XB, and he was having some trouble with it, and he couldn't get it started. And I said, I can't remember what we did to it, but I remember I flooded the carby with a bit of fuel. Oh, there's another story again. That's another XB story. Wow, there's 3 of them. So here, all right. Anyway, so I put a bit of fuel down the neck of the carby, turned it over. It's going. No dramas at all. It's all right. So we take down the road, and we lived at the top of a big hill, and we went down, and I went, all right, with no dramas here. As we're driving down, it's stalled again. It's conked out, so I don't know what the problem was. Power-assisted braking.
Oh, no.
Downhill in the heaviest car man has ever made into a massive, really tight right-hander. And at the bottom of it is a girls' school where I lived. There's a girls' school. They've all just come out of school, and there's just people everywhere, and I was literally just driving this boat down the hill thinking, with no power-assisted brakes, just going, if I don't get, and power steering.
Yeah.
It's all the power's gone. Power-assisted braking, power-assisted steering's gone. I thought, if I don't get this around the corner, this is going to be on the news. This is going to be on the news.
Whatever happened to Merrick Watts?
And I'm just trying to restart it. And just as I got to the bottom, just got it around and just peeled it around the corner. And I just went, and then I went, I think you should call a mechanic. That's what you should do. So that was another time. Another time, all right, here we go. So Rosso and I own the car from 2 hands.
Yes.
It's well known. A lot of people know that. It's an XA. Anyway, similar vehicle. And it ran out of fuel at the lights in Piermont. And that's all right. I've got a jerry can in the boot of the car. I'm not an idiot. So what I'll do is it run out of fuel. I don't know why it run out of fuel, but it ran out of fuel. So I just topped up the car and went, there's enough fuel in there. We'll be all right. 5 litres. That'll get me to a servo. No problems. I'll just put a little bit down the neck so it starts first go, because that's what we want to do, you know. Put a little bit, I don't know why. So I've taken the filter off the top, poured a little bit down the neck of the carby, and got back in the car, started it, bang, car on fire. Poured too much down, kind of sprayed a little bit, and ignited whole car. And people are driving past. This is right where I worked. People driving past going, why is your car on fire, Merrick? And I go, I don't know.
How about helping me put it out?
Fortunately, I also had a fire extinguisher on site, and I just went, shh, put the fire out, and we're all right. And then how do you reckon I restarted it again?
More fuel down the car.
I'm not an idiot. Well, I am, clearly. So there you go. So I've had 3 instances with 3 very, very similar cars, and no one has been hurt. So what does that say? It says I'm excellent at driving.
Good result. Mate, it's been fantastic to talk to you and have a great laugh about some good stuff that you're clearly passionate about. You're doing some awesome things around wineries with stand-up, with colleagues and things. And we
don't need to plug that. Come on,
but we wish you continued success with that. And thanks for chatting.
Thanks for chatting. That was a pretty solid hand slap.
It was.
It's pretty solid. Well done.
Thank you.
Rusty's Garage is written and presented by me, Greg Rust. Series producer and editor is Alex Mitchell. Audio production by Darcy Thompson.
Listener.